Three, two, one. Welcome to the Burning Bear podcast. And I am your host, Anthony Canania, aka the Burning Bear. And some of you, if you were new to the channel, you may recognize me. I used to have a little show called the Stoned Apes podcast where I went by the Reverend. And anybody that's coming from that other show, I would like to welcome you to this channel. I wanted to take some time and shoot an introductory video for this channel so that anybody that was visiting the page understood what it was that I am doing here and why this space is different. In the genre of spirituality and plant medicine and nutrition and fitness, all of these segments are completely flooded with creators. And some of these creators are absolutely fantastic. Some of these creators, not so much. But I have a very specific thing that I'm wanting to do on this channel. And in order for me to convey that to you as the listener, I want to tell you my story. I think that that is the best way for me to be able to communicate this. And if you're here and you're new to the channel, if you haven't seen the Stoned Apes before, if you're looking for beautiful manicured content and super edits and everything, you're not going to get that here. I shoot everything pretty much one take. I don't do a lot of edits. It's all conversation style. And we're just going to put out the very best information that we possibly can in that format. But that makes it easier for me and hopefully a little bit more engaging and enjoyable for you guys as a listener. So when we talk about my story, there's a lot of elements here, and it's going to sound like I'm talking in circles maybe a little bit, but I will do my best to try to stay on track and stay focused and get us to the space where we want to be. So I was born and raised just south of St. Louis, Missouri. And I was raised at the beginning of my life in a non-Christian home, and then later in life in a very Christian home. And when I was younger, somewhere between the ages of 3 and 6 years old, I was sexually molested by a family member. And that situation really made a large impact in my younger life. The way that my parents handled that situation, and this is no means me shitting on them because I understand how difficult that situation must have been. I also understand coming from a religious background and from generations ago where your reputation, your public face was everything. And it was really marginalized and it was diminished. I was told to kind of shove it down, not talk about it. It was an embarrassing thing. It was never one thing that was really addressed all the way up until, like, here I am in my mid 40s now. This isn't a conversation that I can sit down and have with my parents, one that we engage with or talk about. And it really created the foundation of trauma that carried me into the rest of my life. And for the most part, I would like to say that on the surface, I think I handled everything very well. I did not grow up as somebody who was like unable to hold down a job. Being raped as a child didn't put me on permanent disability. In fact, I did relatively okay in school, and I ended up joining the military at 18 years of age. I was an athlete in high school. I semi known and popular. I wasn't definitely part of the popular kids in high school. My upbringing was relatively normal. I was raised by decent parents. I had a family with money. I didn't go without. I didn't grow up poor or anything of that nature. And then I joined the military at 18 years old. And then in 2003, I went to Iraq. And when I went to Iraq, as you can imagine, like many soldiers, I came home with a fair amount of PTSD. Now, my time in Iraq there was nothing special about it. It wasn't harder. I wasn't blown up by an IED. None of my friends died. My military experience is relatively minuscule as well. I did 4.5 years on active duty, a few years in the Guard. And for anyone that knows me when I was in the military, I will be the very first to tell you I was not a good soldier. Like, I was a shitbag soldier. I was in trouble more than I was being, patted on the back for doing a good job. But when I went to Iraq, I felt like I was a good soldier. I did very good in theater. And in fact, I even wanted to stay in the military when I got home. And for whatever reason, it didn't work out that way. None of the stuff that I wanted for reenlistment happened. And so I ended up just becoming a civilian and kind of staying in the civilian world and didn't really pursue anything in the military after that. But when I came home from Iraq in 2003, we hadn't had all of this public awareness about PTSD. The military wasn't set up at this time. The VA wasn't set up at this time to be able to deal with it. All of this stuff was really new. So a lot of soldiers like myself that came home in that period, they had to learn how to deal with and how to heal a lot of this trauma on our own. And that there's nothing special about that. I didn't win any awards or accolades, and I did an okay job. I did a good enough job to be able to hold down a job. I was able to go on to college. I got several degrees. I'll talk about those later and how those apply to the channel. And I got married. I had children. My life was relatively okay for many years. And during that period of time, I went on with life and I thought everything was fine. I thought I was healed. I didn't, I had been raped as a child, but that's something that I never really gave a lot of credit to as far as developing who I am as a person. In fact, I oftentimes would reflect at other people that had similar situations, that they were raped and it was standing in the way of their life. It was very condescending toward those people. And I would think, what's wrong with you? Why can't you do that? Like, I'm just fine. Look at me. I have degrees. I run a business. I'm successful. Like, I have a wife and a family and all these other wonderful things and good's going on. And I was completely clueless and unaware to the mess that was inside of me. And like a lot of people, I turned to religion. I came home shortly after coming home from Iraq. I found Christianity. I got saved. I was going to a Free Will Baptist church for many years and was raised in a Southern Baptist church up until I went to a private school up until high school. And then I had my first exposure with public high school kind of when I was a teenager. When I was in the military, I really didn't subscribe to a religion. I was kind of more of like a neo-polytheist or something like that. I was kind of figuring out my way and hanging around some people that, were into some different beliefs and whatnot, but nothing really substantial. And then I found my way to religion after 2003 when I returned home from Iraq. I got saved, went down that path, and then somewhere along the line I got the calling and I was like, oh yeah, I'm being called by God. I'm meant to be a preacher, which is kind of funny because that's where my nickname from the Stoned Apes podcast comes from, the Reverend, because I am actually an ordained minister through the Assemblies of God. And I was a preacher for some time. Again, didn't really do anything too substantial. I didn't run my own congregation. I was an assistant pastor, served a little bit as a youth pastor, and worked in some regards there. But ultimately, I ended up leaving the faith in 2015, I believe it was. It was right before I got my master's degree, and I graduated with my master's from Lindenwood University, Master's of Business Administration in 2015. It was the end of 2015 because I started teaching at colleges. I'm a professor of business at Central Methodist University, and I'm also a professor of business at the University of Maryland Global Campus. So I do business instruction, economics, accounting, all of those wonderful things that fall under that category. And so I go on, I get my degrees, and then I ended up leaving the church right around that time. And I'm not going to get into in the introductory video all of the issues that I had with church. I'm sure we'll cover that as the podcast goes on, or I'm going to make that a mini episode down the road. But I definitely was impacted by leaving the faith. And I became an atheist for many years. In fact, I spent from 2015 to 2019 as a self-proclaimed atheist. And I would like to be the first person to tell you, I don't think at any stage in my life have I ever been more miserable than when I was an atheist. And during that period of time, I had just kind of lost hope in life. There wasn't really anything to look forward to. I didn't see the meaning or the purpose in it all. And even though I felt free from religion, I wasn't free from the existential trap that was destroying my internal life, really, truthfully. And, we'll talk about existentialism here in a minute as well, because that's a big part of this story. But right around 2019, I came to a crossroads in life. And I think it's really important to understand. And I just want to recap for you guys exactly what my external surface life looked like in 2019. By 2016, I had graduated with my master's of business administration. I had recently got promoted. I was a chief operations officer of a company called JC Business and Financial Services, and I worked my way to partner. I was part owner of that business. I was very successful in the business world. I owned a company called Sapper Consulting, which was a consulting firm that I unofficially started in 2012. And I believe I formally took it on as a subsidiary company in 2017. I had a wife. I had 2 children. My wife worked at the college as well. Military service. I was a veteran. Came from a good family, good home. Didn't have a whole lot going on the surface. If you were just to look at my life, I was making good money. Everything looked great. But I'll tell you what, everything was not great. I was miserable. I was so miserable, in such a level of depression. I'm going to share with you one of the most difficult stories that I can, but it's very important to understand how much I struggled with depression. Depression and suicidal ideation was a theme in my life. I would go through good periods for a few weeks, maybe sometimes even a few months, and then I would inevitably recycle and I would go back. And then it was, super depressed, want to kill myself. How am I going to kill myself? Whatever the case may be. And then I'd come out of that depression, usually when I finally got tired of being depressed, and I would move on, and it stayed there. And then finally, I hit a point where it didn't go away. I had been months and months and months down this hole, this spiraling hole to the bottom, essentially. And I actually really like one of the best quotes out there, and I know it's a Russian quote, and I don't know exactly who it comes from, but the Russians say there is no bottom, and man, did I learn that the hard way. And I was laying in bed one night. I had my son. My son was younger. He was like 6 or 7 years old, something like that, maybe a little bit older, but not much. And I remember sitting there feeling so despaired about life, like looking at the world and looking at society and life and everything. I didn't see the point of being here. I just didn't. And then I felt so guilty and so bad for bringing children into this world, because they were going to have to carry on this burden and go on with life. And I brought them into the world. I chose for these little humans to be here. They didn't choose for this. And here I am wanting everything but to just be here. I just want to exit side left. And so, like many people, I think, do at some point, or at least super traumatized people, especially with military backgrounds, I almost became a headline. I had suicidal ideation and thoughts of killing my family and then killing myself. And it's really scary to think about, and it's embarrassing to admit. It's hard to admit. I know it may make me look like a terrible human, and I understand that. I think that at that moment in time, I was the definition of a terrible human in so many ways. I had a ton of narcissistic traits, very covert narcissist. I was selfish and self-entitled, and I was damaged. I had compound PTSD. I had so much trauma, and I just wasn't in a good place. And the only thing that I could think about is like, I'm going to fix this problem. I'm going to take my family out, and I'm going to take myself out, and we'll call this one good. And I was so, so close to that moment. And in a final act of desperation, I remember getting up out of that bed and running out of my house. I jumped in my car and I called a friend at the time, and that friend talked me off the ledge. And I am so grateful for them. But that was the turning point. And that was not the end of the story. Unfortunately, that's the beginning. Like, we kind of hit rock bottom. My face was in the urinal, so to speak, and it was time to go a different direction. And I didn't know what to do, and I didn't know where to start. I didn't know anything about working on myself, introspection. I thought I was perfectly great. In fact, I thought everybody in my life was the problem. I thought my family was the problem. My wife was the problem. The only thing I didn't blame was my children, and I didn't blame myself. And so, like many middle-aged men do, I went out and I bought the sports car. And then I got the divorce, and I started cheating on my ex-wife in this terrible way. In fact, it was cowardice, to be fair. I was too scared to just sit there and admit to her that I wanted a divorce and to go through it that way. So I thought, what would be easier is if I just cheat on her and I get caught, and then this thing will just naturally blow up, and see, I'll deal with it from there. That was about as good as an idea as it sounded like. It didn't end well. It was cowardly. It was terrible. I hurt my ex in so many ways. I feel so terrible for the marriage that she went through with me, the divorce that she had to endure with me. I have apologized to her since then, but there's no apology in the world that can make up for any type of travesty like that, when you truly just pull the rug out from somebody and you destroy their whole life. And I did the same thing to my kids. My relationship with my kids today is not good. My son eventually quit talking to me once he realized just what type of person I was. And my daughter has done a lot of the same. And to be fair, I can't blame them. I really can't blame them. Where I was in life and what they had the ability to see, what they witnessed, was terrible. And even in the few years following the divorce, when I started down this path of self healing and recovery and growth, and everything that led me to where I am today, not all of that was good. I didn't fix things overnight. I made some improvements, and I fixed here and I fixed there. But at the end of the day, I was a mess for most of that period of time. And during that period of time, my children finally just decided, like, threw their hands up in the air. They're like, I'm done with this guy. And who can blame them? I really can't. I don't, and I won't. I think this is just indicative of what they had experienced in life, and everybody is entitled to their experience. And it doesn't matter the person that I am today, and they don't have to give me the opportunity to correct that. They don't owe me forgiveness. They don't owe me anything. In fact, it's up to them. And if at some point in life that they come to a space where they want to re-engage, then that'll be on them, and I will be here to open my arms and welcome that. But I completely blew my life up, and I got a divorce, and everything started spiraling. But this really wonderful thing happened to me. I ended up meeting a girl, like most people would, right? That woman today is now my partner, and I call her my wife. But there was a lot of very interesting coincidences and universal kind of things that were happening at that time, when all of this was blowing up in my life, and I got this shit storm going around and everything's all crazy. And then poof, this person comes in, and she's a complete shit show too, just like I was. And we kind of met each other at the perfect stage of shit showness. And thankfully, though, we had what each other needed to find the healing. And so my healing journey started probably back in like 2019, right around the time that I started blowing my life apart. And that continued on. I started eventually just working on my health and my nutrition and my fitness. I was chronically overweight. I'm 5 foot at that time. I was 5'6", 6.5 inches tall. That's what's on my military records. 5'6", 6.5 inches tall. I am now 5'7.5", and I'll explain how that all happened in later podcasts when we talk about nutrition and optimizing your body, and why those things are important, and how nutrition and a lack of nutrition, proper nutrition, can stunt your growth, which is what happened to me. So we'll cover that in more detail later. But I first started down the road of getting physically fit. I went from 240 pounds wearing a size 40 pant to where I'm at today. I'm about 170 pounds and I wear a 31-inch pant. Sometimes a 30 if I'm having a really good thin day. Those would be my skinny jeans, right? But that doesn't happen too often. So normally I'm sitting comfortably around the 31 to 32 inch waist, and I am a much fitter, much healthier version of myself today than I was then. And so that's kind of where it started. And then I decided to start a podcast. Also have in part of my history, I'm also a pretty accomplished martial artist. I've been doing Muay Thai for the better part of 20 years. I started training in 2006, and then I went Muay Thai specific by like 2012. I was trained and tutelaged under Ron Smith out of St. Louis, Missouri. He was the first American to ever go to Thailand and fight in Thailand. He was also heavily decorated, one of the most respected people in the Muay Thai world here in the United States. And I had the honor to be able to be trained by him. And I know what you're thinking. You're like, but you just said you were fat. I was super fat and super not in good health. But was I in good shape? Sure. At periods, I had some good fitness, but I was not healthy, and I was not a healthy weight, even though I was doing all of this activity. And so I spent some time in the martial arts world and did that for a while. But in that space, I had an opportunity to see myself in a self-reflected view. If martial arts does anything for you, it allows you to be able to pull what I call the mirror out. It puts a mirror in front of your face and it pulls down all the facades, all of your masks, all of the things that you're wearing, all of your personas. And I'm a tough guy and I'm this and I'm that. I don't care what it is. Martial arts will put that mirror in your face and say, well, what are you really? Who are you? What can you do? And, so that was where I had first started the process of self-reflection, even though I wasn't necessarily translating that to my life at that time, but I was translating it to elements of myself. And in 2019, when I started my healing journey and started to really kind of work on my body and my physicality, and I was also at that time starting to engage in some psychology stuff. I ended up seeing a psychologist for the first time. Remember, from 2003 to 2019, I had never been to a psychologist. I didn't get any counseling. I didn't go to any therapy. I didn't try any of the VA programs. I just self-healed through everything. Healed. I found a way to cope. And, my coping was massive amounts of alcohol because I'm Irish. Okay. So I'm very good at drinking, and I was a professional alcoholic for a long time. And in the 2019, 2020 range is when I was teaching Muay Thai down at a local 10th Planet studio in Crystal City, Missouri. And I met some people there that were wonderful people, and we started a podcast together. And that podcast was called the Stoned Apes Podcast. And with the Stoned Apes Podcast, it was actually very successful. And it started out as just a fun thing. And then it grew and it changed. And, it had all its growing and pains that you would imagine. But mostly what happened was the podcast went away down the road. But in September, November of 2023, when we had started the show was growing and kind of got to this point. Right before then, we got hooked up with the Grunt Style Foundation. Now, the Grunt Style Foundation, I am currently the board treasurer of the Grunt Style Foundation. The Grunt Style Foundation is the advocacy, outreach, veteran suicide prevention awareness foundation for Grunt Style LLC. The shirts, everybody has seen the rifle cross on the arms, the infantry cross. That's Grunt Style. So we knew that we had the opportunity to like, oh, we thought we were going to go big. Here we are. We got Grunt Style's attention. The foundation came in immediately as a sponsorship for us, and went down the road. But thankfully, while I was at the foundation, one of the foundation's biggest pillars, and maybe not their biggest pillars, but a very large pillar for the foundation, especially at that time, is plant medicine and alternative healing modalities for veterans. So they are looking at all things, whether it be going to a Moloko with a sweat lodge, or if it's going to do yoga or equine therapy, whatever the case may be. If it's an alternative modality, HBAT therapy, that's what the foundation does for veterans. And it was really big. And right now we're advocating hard about this, the war fighter for change, which is we're going against SSRIs and all that other stuff right now. So what they were doing is they were looking at a way to like, what are some alternative methods to heal soldiers who have been traumatized? And then they were like, oh, by the way, we take people to go do ayahuasca. And I had heard of ayahuasca before then, but you need to really understand a few things about me at that time. One, not so much by the time I went to Aya. About the year before that, I was introduced to cannabis. But before cannabis, I had never done drugs. I can't say that. I did drugs recreationally as a schoolboy, and then I did a little bit of it when I was in the military, but I was not a heavy drug user. And then when I put that down, I never picked it back up again. So, I've got 15, 16 years of life going on, and I subscribed to every 80s dare program that you had ever heard of. It was like, drugs are bad. This is your brain on drugs, and here's the fried egg. And I was like, no, this ain't going to be good. And so what really helped me, though, was I had run into some prostate issues, and I was having physical issues with my prostate, and the VA was not really doing a good job of taking care of it. And I know that the people out there listening right now are like, what do you mean? The VA didn't provide good health care? No. So I started looking at alternative ways to heal myself. And so I had done the research and understood a little bit about like what cannabinoids are and how cannabis works, and how they use it to treat things like prostate and cancers and different stuff. And so I started self-medicating myself with cannabis about a year before I move into Aya. And so if you listen to the Stoned Apes podcast, you'll notice that we smoke weed on just about every show, things of that nature. And you know what? That was just part of my life at that time. And that was definitely prepped me for being open and aware and acceptance to like, well, you know what? Maybe I'm going to try this psychedelic thing. But I wasn't going into it with the attitude of being a psychonaut. I was actually going into it with the attitude of like, I just wanted the healing. And I really wanted to meet God because, I listened to that Joe Rogan episode where he's like, I think I met God. And, I was like, okay, this is it. Right. So I go to Aya September 2023, I think it was. And like we said, informal. But when I went to Aya, I had this profound experience. And like almost every white American Westerner that goes and does Aya, the minute I come out of this profound experience, I think I want to be a prophet of Aya. And I'm like, I'm going to heal people and we're going to do all this stuff. And I met the one, and everything that you can imagine was definitely the case. And I did some show stuff on it, and the Stoned Apes started to go real plant medicine heavy for a little while. And I did some spots on there, and even did some interviews and participating in a few studies on plant medicine at that point. And really, honestly, that is when my life both changed for the better and got exponentially worse all at the same time. And the next 3 years of my life is the reason why we're sitting here today. And if it wasn't for my amazing wife, I don't think I would be sitting here today. I think I would be one of those awakened spiritual individuals that would be out here trying to sell you on Mother Aya and the graces of the plant medicine and talking to angels and everything else that you have heard in this space. And I'm not here to discredit any of that. I'm not here to say anything bad about anyone who is practicing their beliefs and their faith and their healing in that space. But it wasn't right for me. And there's the number one problem that I want to address right away. There's a message out there that healing is forever. In fact, that's what you'll hear. This is a lifelong journey. This is a lifelong process. You're going to come into this and you are going to heal forever. Sounds great at the beginning until you get down the road on this enough. And then you realize that, like, this is really daunting, because what nobody tells you, and maybe you've heard it a few times, it's starting to get more popular, this message. Healing is not easy. In fact, I just told you, been a Muay Thai fighter for 16 years, been training for 20. I've been to war, survived rape as a child, been divorced twice, ran a business, done quite a bit of stuff. I'm all but dissertation and a PhD. The hardest thing I've ever done in my whole life, the hardest thing that I've ever done in my whole life, is have the courage to heal. I cannot express to you in words how hard that is. And I don't want to sell anyone on the idea that this is going to be easy. The second you decide to take that lens and turn that on yourself, and you look yourself in the mirror honestly, and you develop a philosophy that says, what I am going to do is introspectively dissect every part of myself until I can find peace, happiness, and acceptance with it. And that I will then be healed. And so when I got into the plant medicine space and everybody is preaching this perpetual healing, I thought, oh my God, this is daunting, you know? And then I started running into the roadblocks and the traps. You know, I had a religious background. I was a preacher. I came from a religious upbringing. And then all of a sudden I started seeing things in the spiritual community, you know, the new age spiritual community, the plant medicine community, that looks very religious. There's a lot of religious traps. There's a lot of thought traps. There's a lot of bad information, just like there's a lot of good information. Like I said before, there are people out there putting out some great information. But see, I got caught in these traps over and over and over again. That's why it's taking me so long to get to where I am today, because I didn't have a straight path here. I got caught in the religious trap. I got caught in the giving away my sovereignty trap. I got caught in the worship of plant medicine trap. Got caught in the psychonaut trap. And I have watched so many people that go through this space end up eventually going back to religion. There's a high number of plant medicine people that end up becoming Christians. And I'm not saying that being a Christian is a bad thing. That is not right for me. I don't subscribe to that. If you subscribe to that and that helps you be a better person, then more power to you. I support that. But there are dangers in religion. It causes pain, causes hurt, causes dissension. It dehumanizes people in certain spaces, and it preaches violence and separation and other things, along with all of the good things that are in there. So I chose not to take that spiritual path, and I was able to find one of sovereignty, one where I am sovereign. And it's interesting because a lot of the understandings that I had from my experience in Aya the very first time haven't really changed. But like all things, my understanding and my perspective on them has. And the longer that I have been in this space, still use psilocybin pretty regularly for both microdosing and larger work like journeys. I still use cannabis recreationally and for work, depending on the situation. I'm still very dedicated to my health, my fitness, my nutrition. But when I was going through this space and I was watching all of these individuals in this plant medicine space, and I was seeing myself almost getting caught up, and I was watching people getting damaged, and I was watching couples break up, and I was watching all the stuff that fell into that, I realized that this doesn't seem like the right answer. This is causing more pain than it is helping. And it's causing more pain because it's misunderstood. It's causing more pain because there are charlatans in this space that are trying to sell people on things, and they're hurting people, and they're trying to sell people on this eternal healing. The truth of the matter is this: the only truth to eternal healing is the fact that you live in a world that is full of providing trauma, and you're going to experience trauma throughout your life, no matter what you do. You cannot avoid it. You will traumatize yourself. Other people are going to traumatize you. Situations, circumstances, things. It's all trauma. And you will use the techniques, the tactics, the things that you've learned during your healing process to mitigate, manage, and navigate those situations for the rest of your life. That is the truth. But that's not the same thing as eternal healing. I reached a full cycle on healing, which is really kind of interesting because I then started to view it as a cycle. I started here, no awareness, but my perspective on life was in this space. And then I came around the circle. And then I arrived right back where I started. But the difference is when I got back to where I started, I got back here with all these tools, all this awareness, all this knowledge, all of these skills, a completely different person. But I was still tasked with the same challenge. And that was, how do I be Anthony, this identity, this avatar, this character that I play for the world? We all craft who we are. And then we present that identity to the world. And my healing process gave me the opportunity to understand who that person was in a wholeness and a completeness, and then be able to choose what identity I wanted to present to the world based on the authentic version of myself that I had discovered in the process. We control our thoughts. And if you're somebody out there today that maybe rejected that, well, I don't control my thoughts. Yeah, I understand, buddy. I was there. But there's this little thing called metacognition. And one of my goals in this podcast is to help people learn what that is and to achieve it. To be an observer of your thoughts as the creator of them. To be sovereign in your space. To choose how to craft the identity that is you. And to be able to present that to the world. But in order to do that, you have to be in the world, which is one of the major issues that I had in the plant medicine space. See, one of my biggest traps that I got caught in is I went so spiritual that I was disassociating, and I created this disconnect between my body, the physical self, the material self, the identity, the ego that is interacting with the world. I had separated so much from that. I'd rejected it. I'm not my ego. I'm the man behind my thoughts. I am this. I'm part of the one. I'm source and all of this other stuff. But see, there's a problem. There's no integration in that. The medicine doesn't work. Healing doesn't work. Psychology, therapy, none of it works if you don't learn how to properly integrate it. Because at the end of the day, you know, you hear all this rhetoric, ego death and everything. Now, there's a lot of definitions of ego death. And so I'm not going to shit on the idea of ego death. But what I will shit on the idea of is when you say, my goal is to achieve ego death in my life, well, now you have a problem. Because who's in your life? Last time I checked, people know you people know me by the name of Anthony. And Anthony owns businesses, and Anthony drives cars, and he has a social security number and a driver's license, and he has friends and family and children. See, there's a lot of stuff attached to the ego that Anthony is, that I created to interact with the world. And when that isn't addressed, when you don't come at it from a practical standpoint, and you don't learn how to integrate your healing, your new lenses, your new perspectives, your new paradigms of thought, if you don't learn how to integrate them into your life with practical skills, well, then you're going to run this circle forever. And it's not going to do anything for you. And I watch so many people that are deep in the medicine space, that are deep in the metaphysical space, the spiritual space, the religious space, whatever the case may be. And they're all lost and they're all hurting. You know, you may have read my description, all of this promise of healing from the unhealed. And you know what? That's a true statement. I don't think that I'm better than anyone else. I don't think that me being healed makes me different than them, other than the fact that I have embraced the integration of my healing with my ego and have presented that to the world in a way that is healthy for me and that is healthy for the people around me. And it has allowed me to create a life in a world that is much better than the one that I had. I don't walk around today wanting to kill myself 24/7. Why? Because I have a life that I've chosen. I've taken ownership of my choices and my thoughts. I've taken ownership of my actions and how I'm engaging with the world. I am the one doing that. I am the one creating that. I am not a victim. And a lot of times I'm the one, you know, I'm the one hurting people many years ago. So how could I be a victim in that? I was the one that was hurting everyone. So when you put yourself in that space, you give yourself the ability to interact with the world. And then you can apply these healing methods in a way that matters. And so I started this channel because of all of the things that we had mentioned here. Because healing isn't just about going to therapy or sitting down with plant medicine. Healing really, truly is mind, body, spirit. It's about finding a holistic balance and creating that balance within yourself to develop the ego, the identity that you choose so that you can authentically engage with the world the way that you want to as a sovereign being. In this podcast, I'm going to share a lot of my thoughts with you. I'm going to share a lot of my opinions, but I really want you to understand something. I don't ever claim to be right. If I tell you something, I'm going to tell you what I believe to be the best information that I can give you at this time. But I also grow quickly too. You may listen to a podcast 3 weeks later and I may say something completely different because I've grown since then. I've taken a new lens, a new perspective. I've learned something along the way, which hopefully you will be doing too. And so I don't claim to be a guru. I'm not out here selling you anything and I cannot heal you. It's very important that if you come to this channel, you need to understand one thing and one thing very clearly. If you understand anything that's came out of my mouth at this point, the only person that can heal you is you. You have to choose to be healed. And then you have to do the work to be healed. And then you have to be consistent and disciplined and motivated. And you have to continue to be healed. And don't worry, whatever parts that you haven't fully healed, they will come back. I've experienced that and am currently experiencing that right now as the host of this show. There are a few things that I thought, you know what, I went through, I got past that, I did great. Yeah. And then they reared their ugly head because you know what happened is I put them in a closet. And then that closet door came open and I was like, oh man, there's a lot of shit in there. And there is. There absolutely is. But I'm going to fix it. Why? Because I know how. See, it's not a derailment in life anymore. Now it's just like, oh, okay. Time to go put in some work. Time to go fix that. Apparently, I just put that one in the closet and that one really isn't gone. But now I'm going to fix it. And I will. But you can do the same thing. And that's what I want to do. I want to develop a channel to where I share some fun guests. I share some people that I do think are experts in this space. Not all of these guests, I'm going to agree with everything that they say. Sometimes I will shoot follow-up episodes and fill in some spaces so that you can have the information that I'd like you to have. But I'm not going to tell the guests that they're wrong. Everybody is entitled to their own opinion. I will respect everyone's opinions and spaces. But I will do my best to communicate to you, the listener, what it is that I believe. And then your job is to choose what you believe, what you think is right for you. You can hear my guests, you can hear me, you can listen to my advice, you can read the sources that I'm going to provide for you, you can go to the things that I provide, the education spaces, you can listen to all the content and material. But you have to determine what is right for you because you're the only one that can heal you. You're the only one that can show up. And if you're listening to this video, I really need you to hear that too. Show up. See, you're here right now because you keep showing up. So if you're depressed, if you're sad, if you're suffering from suicidal ideation, I want you to know something. You've been making a choice every day to keep waking up. And that's because you want to be here. I learned that one myself. It's hard. It's painful, but it's good. It's exactly what you want. Take the ownership and keep showing up because you need you and other people depend on you too. So that's what I'm doing here in this channel. I want to provide guardrails. I want you to come into this space looking for self-growth, looking for healing, looking for education. And we're going to talk about it all. I'm going to talk to you about fitness. I'm going to tell you about how to properly get in shape at different ages and things that go against popular norms. Like you're probably going to listen to some of the fitness advice I give and you're going to be like, oh, this guy's an idiot. I don't agree with any of it. Muscle and Fitness said this and this guy over here said that. Well, that's fine. But everything that I'm telling you for a reason because not all the popular information is the good information. A lot of times those people are just selling things too. Most of the fitness advice I'm going to give to you is going to be free. You can't sell free, but it will make a difference in your life. Nutrition's the same way. The amount of disinformation, distortions, and flat out freaking lies in the nutrition space that exists in the world today, complete, absolute rubbish, garbage, and then I get so angry, it's hard to even talk about it. But we're going to dive into that. And I know a lot of you guys, look, this is going to be a hard one for you. You know how many times, I used to rag on a pastor of mine a while back. And when I went to this Free Will Baptist church in Missouri, he used to sit up there and preach against smoking and drinking and all of these things that I was guilty of at that time. And, but then he was sitting there and you know what he didn't preach about? Gluttony. And he was maybe 150 pounds overweight because people are addicted to food. See, they can give up cigarettes, they can give up sex, they can give up smoking, they can not watch that R-rated movie. People can do so many things, but they can't put the food down. They can't say no to sugar. Oh, but it tastes good. Oh, but look, I gotta live. Yeah, okay. You're not living well, and the quality of your life has went down considerably. But hey, at least it tastes good. So I'm going to give a lot of advice like that, and you may not like it. It may hurt to hear that. You may want to reject it. I'm going to challenge you here and now. Listen, it doesn't hurt you at all just to hear what I have to say and give it a consideration, because it has dramatically changed my life. We're going to talk about medicine, plant medicine specifically. And I'm going to give you the very best science-based application of plant medicine that I can possibly give you. Thankfully, I have a lot of connections in this space, and I've been in this space for quite some time now. I have the ability to sit down and listen to Dr. Siegel from Washington University and his research on psychedelic medicines and how psilocybin impacts the brain. I've got to listen to so much great information in this space. And one of the things that I want to provide for you in the plant medicine space is just education. Education that allows for the proper integration, give you real world skills, tools, and abilities, give you a science-based understanding of like what is actually happening to my body and my brain when I'm on psychedelics. Some guidelines to how to use these, what's proper use, what's not proper use, and keep you from falling in the traps so that you can go down the road on your own healing journey. And sure, it may not be the most comprehensive material out there, but it's the material that I want you to know that is based on my experiences and where I got hurt and where I got lost and where I almost got trapped. And so that's what I want to do for you guys. And in the meantime, we'll probably talk about a lot of other cool stuff because I'm into a lot of existential stuff. I love religion. I love a bunch of other things that, I will probably talk on from time to time. Even though I don't subscribe to a religion, does not mean that I am not very educated in the religious space. So if you're a listener and you got some of those interests, please listen. You can also join us on my other podcast. We have another podcast called the Stoned Priest Podcast. That is myself and Father Mark. And yes, you heard that right. Father Mark. He is an ordained priest, and he's retired now, but he was an ordained priest for 30, almost 40 years. He met me when I was doing the Stoned Apes podcast. He was a guest on that show twice. You guys can go find that and listen to those episodes. One of them was called Exorcism. I highly recommend it. It's a great show. Like, he actually talks about an exorcism, and it's pretty radical, but it's out there. But anyway, I love Father Mark to death. He's a great friend of mine. And in this particular podcast, what we do is we explore a little bit of what we do here, but a lot more of material that he wants to cover that I think is very good and full of great information. And then we also get a little crazy and a little existential and a little weird. We talk about aliens, and we're going to talk about all kinds of great stuff over there. So if that stuff interests you, you may not get that here on the Burning Bear podcast, but you can definitely jump over to the Stone Priest podcast, and you can get all the existential, crazy thought experiments and explorations that you would want. We'll dive into the Templars and the Masons and all that wonderful stuff. And, we'll get in there. We'll be talking about aliens and great, I love that stuff. It's just like brain candy. I just can't get enough of it. Right. But none of that stuff makes my life better. None of that stuff helps me deal with the day to day. And what this channel is going to focus on is, how do you deal with the day to day? What part of all of this stuff actually makes your life better? What is the stuff that you need to know? And that's what I'm going to try to do for you. And hopefully I come with enough experience. Again, I'm not a guru. I'm not a master. I'm not some wizard with all the answers. I'm no one special. I'm a human being just like you. Put my pants on one leg at a time. But I care about you. And I want you to not suffer the way that I have. And if my story here resonates with you, that's exactly who this channel's for. It's for the people who got stuck in the traps that I got stuck in. It's for the people that hurt the way that I hurt. It's for the people that couldn't answer those existential questions that drove them to damn near insanity. It's for the people that have struggled with addiction, that have been raped, divorce, family issues, anything that I have experience with, I will gladly share with you. And that's why I'm doing this podcast. That's what this podcast is for, and that's what it's meant to be. It will sometimes be funny. It'll sometimes be animated. Sometimes I will probably be high and just having a good time. Sometimes I may be stone cold dead serious. But no matter what, I promise you, I will always be authentic. May not be the flashiest, may not be the most professional, may not be the best talking, slickest guru out there. But I'll be authentic and I'll be real with you. You'll come with me on this journey and you'll watch me change. You'll watch me grow. You'll watch me go through good times and bad times. You'll watch me apply the same techniques and tactics that I'm going to give to you to my own life, sometimes in real time, because it matters. And that's what makes a difference. So if you found this channel and you like this video and anything that I have said resonates with you, go ahead and hit subscribe. Come back, check out a few more episodes and see if it maintains its course. I'm really hopeful that this one is, and I really want to reach the right people. And we'll have more announcements and things down the road. This is very basic right now, but my goal is down the road, I'd like to have a community. I'd like to have a community that gets together and, whether it's Discord or WhatsApp, but I want to have a community of people that are engaging with each other, that are committed and intent on heading into the same intentions and direction of healing, so that we can all be better, so that we can help other people heal too, because that's the goal. It's not just enough to heal you. What about the people around you? What about the people that you meet in your life? What about the micro impact? Wait until I drop that one on you. But I really do hope this is going to be a show that you enjoy. And I am really looking forward to meeting you guys and speaking with you. And don't hesitate to leave comments. I'll do my best to respond. If it's a stupid, dumbass comment, I'm probably not going to, because I don't really have too much time in my space for that. So if you're a hater or a troller, you could probably just go ahead and leave now. I'm not going to engage with it. Won't faze me a bit. But for everybody else, I'm really looking forward to having you. And I appreciate you taking the time to listen to my speech today, and hopefully this gives you the information that you wanted to know about this show. I'm super excited about our future together. All right, for this introduction video, Burning Bear is out.